Welcome to Interviews with Innocence, a podcast about spirituality, consciousness, and exploring the wisdom our children bring into this world. I believe that our very young children are our greatest teachers. After all, they're the masters of living in the present moment, bubbling in unconditional love, enjoying the messiness of life, and curious about the universe in all its dimensions. The pure essence that young children exhibit lives within all of us. My hope is that these interviews will help us discover, embrace, and connect with the sacred core of childhood that resides within each of our hearts. I am your host, Marla Hughes. Hello, today I have Lynn Russell on the show. Lynn has over 65 years of studying various religions and spiritual philosophies. She researched near-death experiences for Dr. Jeffery Long, and she has studied 2,500 cases. After doing this, Lynn became fascinated with the profound underlying spiritual knowledge brought back. The second edition of her book, The Wonder of You, What the Near-Death Experiences Tell You About Yourself, is about knowledge and your reality. Her interest in science has helped to add profound understandings of the link between science and spirituality. Welcome to the program, Lynn.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you. I wanted to jump in. I've never had anyone who's studied so many near-death experiences. I'm so impressed with that. And by the way, how was your interest sparked that you wanted to start studying this?
Well, I think probably because as a child, I was terrified that I was going to die someday. And, I was just afraid of death. And my mother had told me that when I was, when I died, that I would just disappear. And that was terrifying for me. And so I didn't want to disappear. So that got me going on just religions. And even as a 9-year-old, I was going to the church down the street and trying it out. So that expanded. And then I started studying different religions when I was in my mid-teens.
Interesting. So I know you're in Canada. Do you have a lot of spiritualist churches there? Because we don't seem to have that many here in the United States.
We have, I would think, I don't know. I just know there's one in Calgary. Well, there's two in Calgary, and there's one here. Right. So there's three in this 200 mile range.
Yeah. Did you experience that sort of church when you were younger, or it was just more of the traditional?
When I was later teens, I joined the Unitarians because Unitarians don't have locked-in philosophy that they like me, they studying, finding out what is truth. So that was perfect.
Yeah. So from the very beginning, you were kind of like, I want to figure this out. That's a lot for a 9-year-old. Yeah. That's really cool. So I'd love to talk about a couple of things today, but the first thing is about the life review. We hear, over and over, I know it's one of the I don't know if I want to say standard things, but one of the things that a high percentage of near-death experiencers have. Could you talk about that a little bit? And the reason I want to talk about this, I think it's so important when people hear what this near-death experience or what this live review is about. At least for me, it really changed my life and how I walk in this life. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. One of the big parts is that, we know, the life review is the life review. You're reviewing your life. But we judge ourselves. We do not get judged from outside. One of the things is that they don't care what our status is in the world or how much we have, how rich we are. Those kind of things are irrelevant. They're just nothing. What they're more concerned about is how we treat others and how we are with one another. And that's the primary focus of the death experience. And we actually become the other person and experience exactly what they experience through us. So if we're kind and good, then our soul is filled with joy. We're just so thrilled that we were able to help somebody. And if we're rough and unkind, then we feel such remorse and so sad about, how could we have done that? Um, and we can't lie. We can't change the reality. We can't sort of blame them or tell things differently. It is what it is. And then it's like an echo where we also feel the feelings that the person we dealt with, the people that they dealt with, and how it reverberates our treatment of that person and how it reverberates down the line until it fades out like an echo.
I've talked to some who, do see, listen, we all have our moments, right? That do see times and feel the other person's feelings when we've hurt someone. But I've heard, and I'd like to find out what you have found in your research, that it's just kind of like a flash, because then you do feel badly, but then you're just enveloped with compassion and
Yeah,
love.
yeah,
It's not something that you sit there and feel horrible the rest of your
yeah.
time. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. That is exactly. And actually, I think it's because of the life review that people make the major changes that they do in their life later on, because they
Right.
see this life review and they go, oh, it wakes them up. And so people change drastically. They become very caring. They're very concerned about the world, and all they want to do is good things for the world. And that's their main
Interesting.
focus. And even grouches, even people who are really grouchy. I had a landlord once who had a death experience. And before he had his death experience, he was quite grouchy. And afterward, he was a pussycat. So, yeah,
Wow.
he's a lovely person
Yeah.
after. So the one, the one that I recommend people read is Mellon Thomas Benedict. Mellon Thomas Benedict and Mellon Thomas, he he hated people. He hated other people. He thought that human
Wow.
beings were cancer of the world. And so when he had his death experience, and I recommend anybody reading his experience, it's just absolutely blow you away. And it's online. Um, he he realized how magnificent people were. He was just, he came back so changed. He was just in love with
Wow.
life and in love with people. Completely different
Wow.
man.
And this isn't just that week-long change. This is something that
Lifelong. Yeah,
stays
yeah,
with
yeah.
people.
Now
Yeah.
he has since died recently, actually, about 2, 3 years ago. But
Hmm.
but he did a great deal of good in the world when he was dying, or at least while he was alive. And he also was one of the rare people who brought back memories of knowledge, which many don't. So he was able to use that knowledge to make things and to create things for the betterment of the world.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So can you share with us, can you think of one or two things that he came back with that he
No,
shared with
I'm
people?
sorry, I
Yeah.
can't. I'd have to go and read his site again. I've forgotten.
Yeah. Well, for our listeners, that will be in the show notes, his name, and where you can find that information. Um, so let's talk about the healing aspect of the near-death experience. You say that as one with the source, we are great creators and have far more ability to create our life than we realize, and this includes healing. Can you just briefly talk about that? And also, you mentioned Anita Maury
Yeah.
Johnny, who has not been on the show yet, but I hope that she'll come on and just tell us a little bit about her story.
Well, Anita was at stage 4 cancer and Hodgkin's lymphoma. And she was
Wow.
really, really in bad shape. And she'd had it for 4 years now. And she was at the last stages. She was dying. And she had refused doctors. She wanted to go through the holistic route. And at the end, her holistic doctor said, I'm sorry, there's nothing more I can do. And so her husband said, that's it. And they took her to the hospital. But by the time they got her there, she was dying. And the doctor said, there's nothing we can do. That's it.
Right.
Yeah, so Anita had a death experience, and some amazing things happened while she was there. But she realized that that she didn't need to be ill, that she was making herself ill, that she was creating this, and that this wasn't necessary. She could be well if she wanted to. And that was partly because she also recognized that she was part of the oneness. And that was a part of the whole understanding. And so with that understanding, she was able to heal herself, to come back and heal. And she healed herself because of her new understanding. It wasn't somebody else healing her.
Right, right. Well, it's interesting. I find that some who've never really studied near-death experiences, that these are not just one in a million stories either. I mean, these, if you want to call them miracles, would you call them miracles?
I think doctors do.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
often they use that word.
Yeah, but many people do come back. I mean, Dr. Mary Neal, who had drowned for 30 minutes, and on and on. Not only do they come back, of course, they have a long road
Some
to,
do,
get through. Some do.
and
However,
other ones come back cured, completely cured. There was one man, his heart was in such bad shape, they didn't know if he would make it through the night to the next morning to have his operation. Through the night, he had a death experience. And when they tested him, they were going to do the operation. His heart was fine. There was literally nothing wrong with him. It was a healthy heart.
wow.
So they sent him home.
You must have so many great
Yeah.
stories. 2,500 of them. So let's talk a little bit about the changes. I know many have psychic, intuitive changes, kind of an opening of that awareness. Some come back with special skills or talents. And then, of course, there is the re-entry of this life on Earth. So can you just talk about those two things?
Sometimes the re-entry is difficult because this world is so drastically different than where they were. And the other thing is that this feels unreal. It doesn't feel real. It feels almost like a dream or like, it just doesn't have the real feeling to it. And so, like a shadow world almost. And so that's a hard thing to adjust to stay here and readjust back in. They do if they stay long enough, then they certainly do. Although they never, ever, ever forget their experience. But they come back with no fear of death. They come back, as I said before, very, caring, but they all come back having felt this feeling of connectedness with everything and knowing that even though they're here in this world, that they are connected. It's all one. And and that has made a big difference. I think they, in their death experiences, are changing the world. I really do. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely think you're right. And it's just so wonderful how it's just really getting out there now. And so many people are talking about their experiences, because before, they'd be put in psychiatric wards or whatever it might be. Yeah, it's wonderful. And what about coming back with some of the psychic and intuitive ability?
Well, there's several things. For example, they could never have had any music lessons in their life, but they return not only be it playing instruments, but some of them write symphonies. Or artists, they've become grand artists without a lesson. They do things that academics. There was one girl at college, she was in college, and she had a hard time with math. She hated me. And she
hated what?
Math, mathematics.
Oh, math, yes.
She hated it. And, but she's in college and she has to do it. So she came back, it was a whiz. She just flew through it. Yeah, so
Right.
there's things like that that they come back with. But the psychic abilities they all, almost every single one, I would almost venture to say everyone, come back with some psychic ability that they didn't have before. And
Right.
some of the psychic abilities they have are too strong, and they want to get rid of them because it overwhelms them. So that it's a bit much. But and so, like for example, they hear people's thoughts and they hate it. They start go grocery shopping because going in a grocery store with all these thoughts is just painful. So they ask to have it taken away, or they just learn how to ignore it. Just shove it away
Right.
so that they don't hear it. But that can be difficult too. But what interested me then was the deeper messages, the really deep messages that were being
Right.
brought back. And that's what my books are about.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that, about the deeper messages.
Well, for
Can
example,
you tell us, share,
yeah, it's a little bit hard because I think what I can do is describe what happens to some people. That way it would help.
please?
Some people, although many people see a garden or they see beautiful buildings and that kind of thing, some people actually go into the light and enter the light. And then those are the ones that get the deeper, fuller knowledge. And first of all, they see how creation happens. They watch creation happening. It's like a flood, like a fountain. It's just overflowing, and it just never stops. It just keeps coming and coming and coming, and
Mhm.
that's very beautiful. Another thing is that they feel that the light is a person. It's an entity, and it knows them, and it talks to them, and it knows everything about them, and it looks so, and they're blown away by them. They this knows me, Anyway,
Right.
but another thing that happens when they're in the light is if they've been there long enough, they start to realize that this is home. This is where they came from, and this is where they will
Mhm.
return. And they realize that they they um, they are the light. They become the light. It's almost like they melt into, away from the person that they were, the human person, and melt into becoming the light. It's like an ice cube. And then they realize, and they take part in creation, and they are creating.
Wow.
And that's all of us. The other thing they learn is that that's where all that love comes from that people talk about. It's through the light. And it's so beautiful that it just blows them away. They're excited and thrilled. And it is the love that is used to create with. They learn that everything we know is created through love. Even us, we're love power. That's what we're, our being is love power. And that's how we're created. And it's up to
Right.
us what we do with that, but that's the reality.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was so insightful and wow, I just, so your book has quite a few of the stories in it. You
Yeah,
share, I think that's what
yeah,
your book
yeah.
is,
And
right?
it's out in
Yeah.
second edition, and I've made quite a lot of changes from the first edition. So um, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble,
Yes.
and you can order it through bookstores. So yeah,
Great. Well, thank you so much. And if people do want to find you and reach out to you, how would they do that?
I have a website. It's lynnKrussell.com. lynnKrussell.com. That's easy. And I also am on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and I'm on, what is it called? Instagram, but I don't go there very often.
Right,
I
right.
just can't figure it out.
I know, I know. I didn't until I began a podcast and then it was kind of necessary. Yeah. Well, thank you so, so much. And I'm sure you've heard about the new Netflix series that's out called Surviving Death. Yes, yes. And I think also those people who just, find these things hard to believe, I encourage them to go there and watch some of that. And even though some of it will be pretty far reaching for a lot of people, just I encourage everyone to have an open heart and an open mind.
Well, thank you so
So
much for having me.
you've helped us do that. You're welcome. Thank you. And I will be in
Okay,
touch.
thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Have a great
You too.
evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening in today. If you want to learn more about the show, you can find us at interviewswithinnocence.com and on Facebook or Instagram at Interviews with Innocence. Please write me a message, tell me what you liked, and let me know what else you would like to hear. I would love to hear from you. And if you liked what you heard, please leave us an iTunes rating and review. It helps other listeners find the show. Thank you.